When you save your money in the bank is going to pay you somewhere between 0 to 4% a year in interest depending on where you're saving your money. But then when you go and borrow those same dollars from the bank, they're going to charge you somewhere between 5% all the way up to 30% a year in interest depending on how you borrow that money. So when you save your money in the bank, you're getting this, but then when you go to borrow the money from the bank, you're going to be paying this. Now, here's the question you want to ask. Who is getting that spread? That spread is not going to the people that are saving their money. It's not going to the people that are lending money from the bank. The banks are working to make one person rich, and that person is the shareholders, the investors in the bank. And guess what? Anybody can invest in banks. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out and invest in a bank. I want you to start thinking like an investor. But the whole idea here is banks are working to make the investors rich, and you want to start thinking like an investor instead of just thinking like a consumer and somebody who just saves all their money. Now, it's not bad to save your money. You want to know why you're saving your money, having emergency savings, having money to invest, but you also want to think about how you're actually investing your money because that's where your wealth is built. I mean, just take a look at JP Chase Bank. Right now, they are paying 0.1% a year on your savings. But if you go and invest in that same stock, the JP Chase Bank stock, they're paying almost 2% a year in dividends, which means you're becoming wealthier when you invest your money in the company and own a piece of the company as opposed to when you just save your money in the bank. Now, yes, of course, when you invest your money, it's more risky. The stock can go down. They can stop paying dividends. The stock can go bankrupt. But I want you to start thinking like an investor so you can understand how wealth is built and how wealthy people think. So let me show you. This person is now very happy. You can see the big smile that they have on their face because they're going to their bank and they're going to deposit $100. Now, the bank gives you a receipt saying, yes, you gave us $100 and you can withdraw this $100 anytime you want. But the bank has to earn a return on that money because they're going to be paying you interest, even if it's small, but they have to make money off of that. So what do? They're going to do something called fractional reserve lending, which means they're going to take a fraction of the money that you deposited and they're going to store it in a vault. So this bank might save $10 in a vault somewhere, but then they're going to go and lend out $90 as fast as possible. Now, this person that just borrowed the $90 is very happy because they got this $90 in their pocket and they can go and spend this money. And when this money gets spent, it ends up into the pockets of bank number 2. Now, bank number 2 just got a $90 deposit and they're going to do the exact same thing. They got this money in the bank account, but now they're going to want to earn a return on this $90. So what do? They're going to take a fraction of this money. They're going to save $9 and then they're going to lend out $81, and this is going to happen again and again and again, and it works because banks hope and pray that you are all not going to go and pull their money out of the banks at the same time, because if you did, it would cause a complete collapse of our entire banking system. But there's a couple of things that you want to understand about this, which is number one, this system creates inflation, but maybe not because of what you think. So you might have heard of something called FDIC insurance. Every bank, every reputable bank is going to have a sign that says you are FDIC insured, which means you are protected up to $250,000 if your bank collapses. Well, you got to understand, where is that money coming from? Because FDIC insurance only has enough money to pay out a small portion of all the funds that are covered. And we're not talking about 50% of funds or 10% of funds. We're talking about less than that. A very small portion of all deposited funds are actually there in the FDIC insurance. So if a bank collapse happens and there's not enough money in FDIC, well, what happens next? FDIC is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, which means if FDIC runs out of money, they go over to the United States government and they say, hey, we need some money to pay back these depositors. And the United States government doesn't have any extra money because if they did, they wouldn't be $37 trillion in debt. So what happens next? Well, the United States government gets their money from taxpayers through tax dollars, which means they can raise your taxes to pay off that bad bank, or they can just print that money through the Federal Reserve Bank, which creates more inflation. So when you have these bank failures, that comes out of the pocket of taxpayers or just people in the United States, because now you have to pay the price through inflation. But the second thing that you also have to think about now is when a bank collapses and it gets protected, meaning bailed out by the United States government, like we saw happen in 2008 multiple times, where does that money come from? Again, the United States government doesn't have money to just hand out to everybody. So the United States government has to get that money from somewhere. And that somewhere is either taxpayers with tax dollars or by printing that money and creating inflation. So yes, when this works, it's great. But when it doesn't work, somebody has to pay the price, and the person that pays the price is often the person who doesn't understand the way that the banking system works, which is why I want you to understand this. That way you can win in the system by becoming an investor. If you enjoyed this clip and you want to continue your financial education journey, I have another video that I think you'll love. All you got to do is click that button right over there. And for those of you who want to stay up to date on the top finance and business news, you can join Market Briefs, my free financial newsletter, by clicking that button below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.